Hi everyone, my name is Josie. I'm a beginner knitter and sewist, and today I'm going to take you through everything that I made in 2023. I had a bit of limited experience with both knitting and sewing before this year, but this year was the first year that I really got serious about crafting. So I'm going to take you through everything that I made in chronological order so you can kind of watch that progression over the course of a year. The first item that I made this year is this green velvet cloak that I made out of a thrifted curtain following a tutorial from the Part-Time Hobbit. This was just kind of an idea that I had, and when I saw the curtain, I thought it was perfect for the project. It's obviously a little bit rough being my first sewing project of the year, and it's also not something that's really wearable. Like, I really don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what I'm gonna do with this. Obviously, it's not my best work, but for something like a Renaissance fair or a costume party, I think this would do the trick. Even though I started this vest in 2022, I finished it in 2023, so I think it counts as part of the 2023 makes. This was actually my first garment that I ever made. It is the Honey Church Vest by ahoneyknits. I obviously omitted the cross from the church, so it's more of like a house vest. I used some leftover yarn that I had Encore Plymouth worsted weight, so not the yarn that's actually called for in the pattern, but I thought these colors matched pretty perfectly with what the original church vest looked like. This was my first time making a garment. This was my first time doing any kind of color work. I tried intarsia. I didn't really do it correctly. There's a lot of small errors, but for my first garment, I was pretty proud of this project. Jumping right into my biggest project of 2023, I completed this lap-size quilt after taking a quilting class in January. I went into the class having never quilted before, so the pattern was something that I drafted using some of the techniques that we learned in the class. The fabric is just a jelly roll from Joann's, I believe, in this fun tie-dye batik rainbow pattern. So I added the borders to kind of break up the intensity of the color a little bit, and it reminds me a little bit of stained glass. After completing the church vest, I still had a lot of yarn left over and I wanted kind of a smaller project. So I made this Sophie scarf by Petit knit in that Encore Plymouth worsted weight yarn. So again, a bigger yarn than was called for in the pattern. But I think with the scarf, the gauge is pretty forgiving. Like, it doesn't really need to be any specific size. And I am really happy with how this scarf turned out. I get a lot of wear out of it. It was a super quick make. I think this is a great project for beginners because with the increases and decreases, it's still engaging more so than a typical straight scarf, and it's much smaller, so it works up way faster, and overall is a great wardrobe staple. While this kind of makeup pouch was trending on TikTok, I hopped on the trend and made a couple of different makeup pouches and book sleeves and things like that to really practice my sewing skills. I feel like something like this is a great way to learn how to sew because you're doing a lot of straight lines and practicing zippers and things like that, but it's also very low stakes where, again, like the Sophie scarf, you don't have to worry about sizing and it can be pretty forgiving. So I made a matching like travel set with a makeup pouch and then a matching book sleeve. And you'll see these patterns kind of return a couple of times because it was such quick and easy makes. It makes great gifts. It makes great accessories for yourself. There are a ton of different patterns for this kind of makeup pouch all over the internet. It was super huge this year, but I will link the one that I used for this specific one in the description of this video. Here's another book sleeve. The next project that I made, sticking with the pouch theme, is this college rule inspired pencil case inspired by this image that I found on Pinterest. I think this is another great beginner project because it's basically like doing an exercise in straight lines, but then you actually get a cute product out of it instead of like just doing straight lines over and over again. So I did the notebook paper lines on my machine and then I hand embroidered the name, and I made a couple of these. I made one for myself and one for my grandma. This is a super fun and easy project. One thing that you'll start to notice throughout this year was the curse of the headwear, whether it was hats, bandanas, balaclavas. Every single piece of headgear that I made this year just didn't fit, or I ran out of yarn or ran into various issues, starting off with this bug hood by Rose Knitwear. I really love this pattern. I think it's a really cute idea, but when I made this, I like didn't really understand gauge or yarn substitutions or anything like that. So I ended up substituting a yarn that I think is much thicker than the pattern originally called for. So in order to get gauge, the fabric is super, super thick, and it's kind of reminiscent of like a neck brace, which is obviously like not the best look. And I also ran into some issues with the seaming. So this seam is like so thick that it just really does not lay flat. Like it sits on my head in a really strange looking way. So as you can see, this was a bit of a fail. Here is another makeup pouch, very similar to the other one, but I tried to do a thicker interfacing so it would be a little bit more structured. It was a lot harder to work with the thicker interfacing, so this one actually looks a little bit messier than the first one, but it does have a little bit more of like a stand-up structure. As you can see, when I find a pattern that I really like, I tend to make it over and over again. Like with this Sophie scarf, I made this one in a pink acrylic yarn. I think it was like a big twist or something like that. But between the color and the makeup of the yarn, I really just don't get as much wear out of this as I do with the other one. I found a really cute picture of a pink Sophie scarf on Pinterest that I was trying to recreate, but I didn't have quite the right shade of pink. So this was a fine project. It turned out okay. One of my goals for 2023 was to knit my first sweater. So here she is. This is the Danbury sweater by What Allison Wears, knit in Cascade Lana Grande in just like this off-white creamy color. When I was looking for patterns for my first sweater, I didn't really have anything super particular in mind. I knew that I wanted to do something bulky and oversized with a little bit of a crop, and this was actually like the perfect pattern, and it called for the yarn that I had already picked out to make the sweater. Overall, this is like, it looks like a first sweater. Like, obviously there are things that I would go back and do differently. I think I didn't pick up enough stitches around the neckline, so the ribbing looks kind of off. And when it came to weaving in the ends, I think I did like a terrible job. Like, I'm pretty sure you can see where the ends are woven in, which is not ideal. But overall, for a first sweater, I feel like this is exactly what I was looking for and what I kind of expected. Continuing the curse of the headwear, I did this super quick marled beanie, but at this point in the year, I actually was purling incorrectly. I had been purling incorrectly the whole time. So my stitches would, if I didn't correct by knitting through the back, my stitches would be twisted. And I had like figured out workarounds for the church vest and for the sweater that I made, but when it came to ribbing, I couldn't figure out what was going on. And so you'll see that the rib is twisted around the brim, which I just was getting so frustrated with because I just like didn't know what I was doing wrong. And I think I restarted this a couple times, but just couldn't figure out what I was doing. So it's like, I think if I had done it correctly, this would have been a super cute, simple hat. But since the stitches are twisted, I would say this is kind of a fail. The next sewing project that I did is a little goofy looking. It's this heart-shaped pillow that I made using leftover velvet from making stockings the year before. And I just like drew a heart on some newspaper and then stuffed it. It looks a little bit wonky, but overall it's kind of cute. Now getting into more of the summer projects, my first summer knit of the year was this Florentina top. I knit this in Knit and Crochet Essential Cotton. It's just this front tie top with little I-cord ties. This was a project that I thought was going to be really quick because obviously it has no sleeves, but at this point it was the project with the smallest yarn size. I believe it's a DK weight, and my other projects had either been in bulky or worsted, and this is knit flat back and forth. So it ended up taking a lot longer than I had anticipated, but overall it's a pretty cute piece. I made it for the summer thinking it would be a cute summer top, but I found that it actually is really nice as like a layering piece. over dresses or long sleeve tops in fall and winter as well. Another summer project that was a little bit better bang for my buck was this Shirred tube top made using a tutorial from Rosery Apparel and just some scrap gingham fabric from an old dress that I had. This is a super simple project and again is a good one for practicing straight lines because it's literally just like straight lines over and over again. I did run into some tension issues with my elastic thread at the beginning and had to unpick elastic thread more times than I would have liked. But once I got past that, it was pretty simple and worked up fairly quickly. I think coming from a really long-term knitting project, it felt faster. Yeah, this is a super cute top and I'm excited to wear this next summer. I didn't really get a chance to wear it that much this summer. After seeing plaid maxi skirts all over my Pinterest, I decided to make my own using this thrifted plaid fabric and just a tiered maxi skirt tutorial. There are a ton of different tiered maxi skirt tutorials all over the internet, but I will link the one that I use specifically in the description. This was actually my second time making this particular pattern, but the first time that I attempted it, I did it in like a quilting cotton, so it just like was really stiff and totally unflattering and just did not turn out how I had envisioned. So I was really excited to make it again in a much flowier, looser fabric. It turned out a lot better than the first attempt, obviously. I did end up measuring incorrectly and having to redo the whole top half, so the gathering is a little bit inconsistent throughout the skirt, but overall I get a lot of wear out of this and it was cool to make something that I had actually been like seeing on Pinterest and being inspired by, and then now having my own handmade version in my closet. The next project that I made is kind of the first time you'll start to see this Ohio star motif, which is kind of making a return. You'll see in some of my works in progress. When I took my quilting class, I was really drawn to this shape, but for the beginner level class, it just like wasn't something that we were able to do. So I decided that I wanted to try my own version, just following a YouTube tutorial. So I decided to make these two complementary quilt blocks to hang on the wall of my craft room / office. Before summer ended, I wanted to get in one more summer knitting project. So I made this sweater inspired by this picture that I saw on Pinterest of a sweater by Isabel Watkins. I used the Easy Knit Summer Sweater tutorial by Crochet with Carrie, but I ended up adapting the pattern pretty heavily. I made it a lot more cropped. I did the sleeves differently. I did the shoulder seaming differently, but it was nice to have a pattern to kind of give me an idea of how many stitches to cast on and just kind of like give me some confidence trying to draft this sweater based on one picture by myself. The next 3 projects I'm going to show all at once because it's just the same thing in different colors. So in September, I found a serger on Facebook Marketplace. And so I really kind of went through an intense sewing phase as I was trying to figure out how to use the serger and really take my sewing skills to the next level. So I started out with this pair of Rosery shorts from Rosery Apparel. It's just a simple pajama short pattern with pockets because I had found this pink gingham that I really wanted to make shorts out of, but I really wanted to make sure that I knew what I was doing before I jumped into that project. And this was when boxer shorts were like all over my Pinterest. So I thought this was a perfect project to like learn sewing and also have something that was kind of on trend. So I made this pair with some of the leftover plaid fabric that I had from the maxi skirt. From far away, they look fine. The inside is pretty messy, just as I was kind of like figuring out how to serge around curves and things like that. I kind of struggled with that, but I learned a lot and I felt like I wasn't quite ready to do the pink gingham yet. So I did another practice pair of shorts in this like electric blue color. Again, I like learned a lot from this. And after completing this pair of shorts, I felt like I was finally ready to do the pink gingham, which I am kind of obsessed with. I didn't have enough fabric to do pockets, but I did add these floral buttons to the front, and I like put in my tag and serged the inside and was like, this was actually something that I was really, really excited about. I finished these like mid-September, so it was just starting to get cold, so I like haven't actually worn these out of the house, but they're super, super comfy for just like hanging out at home. And I really hope that the boxer short trend is still a thing by next spring and summer so I can actually wear these. This doesn't really count as like a knitting or a sewing project, but in September I took an indigo dyeing class and I wanted to show what I dyed in that class. So we used a couple of different indigo dyeing techniques, and I have this silk scarf as well as this cotton bandana, and it's really cool. You can see like the difference in color depending on the material and the technique. I also dyed 2 skeins of yarn. I did one that was wool and one that was cotton. It was a super fun project, and I'm hoping in 2024 to maybe get into some more natural dyeing and maybe try some natural dyeing on my own. So it was really cool to have a class to really like teach me the basics. Over the summer, I went to Flock Fiber Festival where I picked up a Seattle doodle deck from Pacific Knit Co. And if you don't know what the doodle decks are, basically it's like a deck of cards, but instead of having a number or a suit, each card has a little colorwork motif that you can stack or repeat to create your own kind of customized colorwork designs. So using that deck, I made this Seattle doodle cowl for my grandma. It was a super fun project. It was my first time doing colorwork in the round, which I found to be much easier than stranded colorwork flat. And since each section is so small, it kind of like motivates you to keep going because you just want to do like one more row, and each row you see the design really coming together. So I thought this was a great beginner project to kind of practice that kind of color work. And I think it turned out really cute. Again, with the Encore Plymouth yarn and with the headgear curse, I have this place marker hat by Cleo Malone. I love this pattern. Like, I think it's a really cute pattern, but I cast this on to knit on a flight, and I had the pattern downloaded on the Knit app, but for some reason it wouldn't let me access the PDF in airplane mode. So I couldn't actually look at the pattern while I was knitting. So I did the best that I could from memory and definitely made some errors. So I think someday I do want to try knitting this hat again, just because I love the like super simple 1x1 color work, but I also made this too big and overall is kind of just like a mediocre project. This next one, I don't really know if it even counts as a finished object because I have so much alteration to do before it will actually fit me properly, but I did this graduation dress by My Ardor. I think I'm just like in between 2 sizes, and I like didn't really take that into account when I was cutting the pattern. And it's basically just like 2 pieces sewn together, and all of the shaping comes from the way that you cut the fabric. I think I might just remake this completely and like totally start over because the shape of the dress is supposed to be very formal, like it's a long flowy dress, but then the fabric that I used is just this like secondhand stretch fabric that is like very reminiscent of athletic wear. So it kind of like the fabric and the pattern don't really match, but it was a good practice, and I think I might just like try this again if I can find a better fabric to do it in. Getting into my most remade pattern of 2023, I made the Pomona pants by Anna Allen, which is my favorite beginner sewing pants pattern. I knew I wanted to make a pair in brown linen, but before I did that, I wanted to practice and make sure that I knew what I was doing going into like the actual project. So I made this pair in just this secondhand purple plaid. It's a super fun pattern, super easy, came together way faster than I was expecting. I think these are really fun. I've yet to like wear them out of the house just because I feel like the plaid reads as like pajama pants, even though it's like a cotton material, so it's not really pajama pants, but I just like haven't figured out how to style them. So if you have any ideas for how to style purple plaid flare wide leg pants, please let me know. Even though I finished these in October, like the end of October, this pair of brown linen Pomona pants is by far my most worn make of 2023. I feel like this was the first time that I was making a project that actually like legitimately filled a gap in my wardrobe. I feel like linen pants are perfect for travel. They're perfect for like casual. You can dress them up, you can dress them down. I absolutely love these pants. I was so glad that I had done the practice attempt before going into these, so I felt confident. I felt like I knew what I was doing. And this was my first sewing project that I felt really, truly proud of. After completing the Pomona pants, I kind of had a little bit of an ego, and I thought that I was like ready to take it to the next level. So I wanted to make a quilted jacket. So I did this Coast Coat by Luray, handmade using just a thrifted IKEA blanket. From far away, it looks cute. I really struggled with this. I think my machine just like was not happy with the super thick fabric, and there was a lot of shifting, and I struggled with some of the bias binding. I had done bias binding before with like the graduation dress, and I don't remember if I'd done bias binding before that, but with the quilted jacket, it was a lot more difficult. And if you look closely, there are a ton of like errors and imperfections, but from far away, I think this looks pretty cute. The project that was on the needles for the longest in 2023 is by far this self-drafted stripy sweater vest. I knit this in Knit Picks City Tweed DK that I got secondhand. And this project wasn't actually that time consuming. I just like put it on pause for a really, really long time and really struggled to like pick it back up again. Mostly because I started this and then I felt like my skills kind of progressed. And then by the time I picked it back up again, I felt like it wasn't really like an accurate representation of where my skill level was. And since it was self-drafted, it was a real trust the process kind of thing. And maybe the process was not to be trusted, because I actually really don't like how this came out. Like, I didn't do any armhole shaping, so it looks really, really awkward. Like the sleeves just kind of like stick out in a way that I really don't like. But if I layer this under like a jacket or something and hide the armholes and make it look like it's just a sweater, then I think this is kind of cute. Then I made another pair of Pomona pants. This is out of a thrifted bed sheet, and I used the like edge of the bed sheet to be the hem of the pants, which I thought was kind of a fun detail. Like, these pants are kind of crazy. I've been calling them my clown pants just because they're like a little bit funky and they're like a little bit bolder than anything that I would buy in a store for myself. But I thrifted this bedsheet and I just love the pattern on it. And so eventually I want to make a matching quilted vest. But for now, I just have this pair of pants. My final finished object is another victim to the hat curse for this year. I was knitting just this basic ribbed beanie for my boyfriend, but I ended up running out of yarn before it was the size that I wanted it to be. So it ended up looking pretty tiny. I don't really know what we're gonna do with this. I don't know anyone with a head this small. Maybe I'll have to make him another hat is what I'm gonna have to do. But this was my unfortunate final finished object. Before I like close out the video, I really don't want to end on that note. So I want to talk through my works in progress that I'm working on right now, because these are two projects that have taken up like a significant chunk of my 2023. So I feel like it would be remiss to not talk about them. The first work in progress that I want to talk about is this mohair wrap cardigan situation. So this was originally supposed to be the Puff and Go wrap top. And I originally started this planning to wear it to a Taylor Swift concert in July. Obviously, it is December, so that did not end up happening. But I basically put this project in timeout for a really long time because I was losing my mind trying to learn how to do German short rows in 2 strands of mohair. It was from actually a project photo that I saw on Ravelry that I kind of realized like I can make my own rules and I don't have to follow the pattern if I don't want to. And at this point, I just like wanted to be done with it, but I didn't want to frog a bunch of mohair, so I decided to just like knit a straight sleeve to give it kind of like a wide sleeve, kind of like the Pomona pants, but in sleeve form. So here's one sleeve done, and then I actually, since I like changed the pattern so much, ended up running out of yarn. So I just ordered more, and hopefully as soon as that arrives, I'm just gonna like finish this tube of stockinette and hopefully be done with this project. The next work in progress that I've really been focusing on is the Heirloom Quilt cardigan by Catherine Seeberger. When this pattern came out, I like instantly, it went to the top of my list. You saw earlier that I've been really into the Ohio Star quilt block, so I thought this was just like the perfect pattern. It's a very time-consuming project. It's just like a bunch of patchwork squares. I've done 26 of the 36 that I need, but I just started seaming together the back panel just so I don't have to do all of the seaming all at once. It's just like a bunch of mattress stitch. So while I'm really excited to like wear this cardigan, I'm also really excited to be done with this project. I'm gonna try and focus on like finishing this up in the next couple of weeks and hopefully be done before we're like too far into 2024. That concludes everything that I made or worked on in 2023. Thank you so much for sticking around until the end of the video. If you have any questions about anything that I made or anything that you saw in today's video, please feel free to leave a comment. I will leave patterns and tutorials for everything that I made in the description box. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.